Number 5. Deception Island. There's a place in Antarctica called Deception Island, which does not even remotely sound like a place I would have any interest in visiting, because it sounds kinda evil, haunted, or at the very least intentionally misleading. Deception Island was once used as a whaling operation in the early 19th century, where whales were brought in to be harvested and processed, and as such, it's littered with the remains of the mighty creature's bones and carcasses. Unfortunately, in the early 19th century, Avatar: The Way of Water hadn't yet been released, so none of the whalers knew that whaling was bad, and they kept doing it. Maybe it's just the name, or maybe it's the reputation as an abandoned whaling station littered with macabre souvenirs of Earth's biggest mammal, but there have been all sorts of stories and rumors about Deception Island that something or someone is still living there. Perhaps it's the spirit of the whales themselves. The whaling station was abandoned during the Great Depression and eventually found a new life being repurposed as a British base during the Second World War. The station still stands alongside the vats where the whale fat was once burned, but it's all rusted over and lost to time. Recently, a paranormal investigation crew made the cold trek out to Deception Island to check out what the hubbub was about and experienced all manner of suspicious activity. The crew noted that when they visited the island, immediately they could see light orbs all around them and see strange shadowy apparitions, and reported hearing strange voices speaking to them, but in a language that nobody could make out. It didn't sound like any modern language. Now, in some cultures, whales are considered very important animals, even some cultures considering them as sacred. Who is to say that a ghost could only manifest as human? There's been reported stories of animal ghosts before, and considering how much suffering there must have been there and how profoundly emotional whales are, it does seem possible that the spirits of the whales are still calling out there to this day. And if you're looking for more scary urban legends, cryptids, aliens, and just about everything else freaky under the sun, baby, look no further. Top 5 Scary's got all you're looking for and then some. Take a click through, subscribe, and enjoy. Number 4. The Ghost Ship. Speaking of non-humanoid entities, let's talk about one of my absolute favorite dinner conversation topics: ghost ships. Back in the era of exploration, the South Pole was a treacherous pass, and countless explorers would sail their last expedition around the Antarctic. One such ship would be a schooner, the Jenny. Not much is known about the Jenny, the purpose of its original mission, or who was sailing on it. What we know of the Jenny mostly comes from when it was found, when it was discovered by a whaling ship in the year 1860. The whaling ship, the Hope, was sailing through when the spotter saw a battered, beaten, but somehow still sailing schooner passing narrowly through the gap between two icebergs. The crew of the Hope closed on in, looking to make contact, recognizing the English flag atop the mast, and assuming the ship was in grave danger. They sailed forward. There appeared to be 7 men standing on the deck, although they looked gravely underdressed for the weather. It wasn't until the Hope sailed close enough that the crew realized the men they were looking at on the Jenny weren't the crew, but nothing more than frozen remains. The men had been flash frozen solid, as if it had happened in an instant. They appeared to be in mostly good condition, not really showing signs of decomposition or anything. The Hope's captain, one Captain Brighton, boarded the Jenny to try and understand just what had happened. He went underneath the docks and found a man slumped over sitting on a barrel, a journal in his hands. Brighton went up to wake him, but immediately realized, like all of the others, he was frozen completely solid in place. He pried the journal out of his hands to read the last entry. May 4th. 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the last one still alive. If this log was to be believed, then that would mean the crew had been sailing as corpses aimlessly for decades, preserved as if not a day had passed. A real-life ghost ship. Captain Brighton took the journal with him to return it back home. Tragically, the wife of the Jenny's captain was found dead in the bedroom cabin alongside their dog. The Hope sailed off with nothing more than the journal in hand and left the Jenny idly floating across the frozen water, where she still may be to this day. Or perhaps she's plunged deep beneath the icy water. Hopefully those men got to find some peace, and oh man, I hope they found some food wherever they are. Number 3. The Spider Bite. Now this is one of my absolute favorites. I remember being told this one at a schoolyard when I was just a fledgling ghoulie. The story goes that a woman from frigid northern England, where the sun simply doesn't shine, takes a vacation to somewhere nice and sunny to soak up some rays and take a break from the dreariness of Leeds. Usually it's Mexico, so she journeys to Guadalajara. The woman, while sunbathing, is bitten by a spider without noticing. Days pass and the spider bite grows inflamed and red. She seeks out a local doctor who dismisses it as nothing more than a spider bite and tells her that it'll settle itself in a matter of days and she has nothing to worry about and should just enjoy her vacation. She continues on her vacation, but notices with each passing day that the bite on her cheek is growing slightly. She complains that it's growing sore and larger, and she returns to the doctor yet again. The doctor tells her if she's truly so worried about nothing but a spider bite, she should just take a hot bath and try to relax and ease her skin. She goes back to her resort, and during the bath, the boil on her face softens and bursts, and hundreds upon hundreds of baby spiders crawl down her face as it was an egg the entire time. Just delightful. Now, some of my ghouls might recognize this particular tale from the collection of haunted stories, scary stories to tell in the dark, made famous by its absolutely wretched illustrations straight out of your childhood nightmares. I'd wager that the charcoal drawing of the spider bite woman left an impact on you the way it did me. This book changed my life, really. I used to actually be a very normal, happy kid, and then I took this out in the 3rd grade from the library, and now I can only talk about ghouls, goblins, ghosts, and grossness. Number 2. Edward Mordrake. Edward Mordrake, as the legend goes, was a young, intelligent, and good-looking noble Englishman and a talented musician. A real Renaissance man. A man with all this going for him surely led a very successful and happy life, right? Well, unfortunately for Mr. Mordrake, he was cursed to bear host to a passenger, otherwise he wouldn't be on this list. Edward Mordrake, more famously known as the man with 2 faces, is said to have been born with a face on the back of his head. It's said that his secondary face was a malignant sort. When Mordrake would cry, his face would smile and sneer. When Mordrake would laugh, it would cry. Mordrake complained bitterly of his twin. He couldn't sleep and suffered from severe insomnia, claiming that the face would whisper to him in the night. It would whisper such things they only speak of in hell. Not quite a comforting bedtime story. Really can't imagine it was too easy sharing a pillow with a fellow like that. He would beg doctors to remove it, but was told repeatedly that it wasn't possible, lest he suffer the consequences, as the two were linked. The nobleman eventually couldn't bear to put up with the suffering anymore, and at the age of 23 was prompted to take his life. He left behind a note demanding that after his death, the face be destroyed and all remnants of it destroyed, for fear that it would follow him into the afterlife. The story of Edward Mordrake has captivated audiences for years, reaching its peak when Mordrake himself featured as a character on the 4th season of American Horror Story, Freak Show. So is there any truth to this, or is it just a tall tale? While no remnants of Mordrake were ever found, nor any written records, solely stories passed down from generation to generation. So whether or not it was real, all we can attest to is just how creepy it was. And number 1, Laorona, I am so sorry to my viewers, that is definitely not how you pronounce that properly, is one of the most well-known folk legends in Hispanic culture and has been adapted, told, and retold countless times. Let me add one to that pile. No one really knows where the original legend of La Llorona appeared from, although the one connective thread between all versions of the story is that La Llorona is the spirit of a woman who cast her children away into the water and spends the rest of eternity searching for them around rivers and lakes. In some versions of the story, she was betrothed to a wealthy Spaniard who abandoned her, and after being deserted, in a fit of manic rage, she threw her out into the local river. The legend is widespread throughout Mexico and Central and South Americas. The legend goes that you can find her late at night, clad all in a white gown, patrolling around bodies of water. Where it goes from here varies from teller to teller, with some variations of the story saying that she kidnaps lost children, others saying she attacks unfaithful husbands, and some meaner variations reporting that she attacks wantonly at anyone who sees her. Regardless of the local legend, all the stories can agree that when you hear La Llorona crying, you should get away. Now, the story has found its way to several Hollywood movies, TV shows, and more. Anyone else remember that pilot episode of Supernatural? Every couple years, someone takes a new stab at the legend of La Llorona, meaning it's unlikely you'll stop hearing about her crying anytime soon. Just hope the poor girl finds those kids someday. She's been looking for a really long time.
Coming in at number 5, we've got Ogo Pogo. Let's start with a famous one. Move over, Nessie. We've got a Canadian sea cryptid to discuss. If you've ever been to British Columbia, you'll know that there are plenty of mountains and lakes to explore. One of the more well-known ones, both for its picturesque qualities and supposed housing of a monster, is Lake Okanagan. Situated in Kelowna, this lake is famous for its vacation-friendly beaches. But if you head out looking for a relaxing day on the water, you might meet up with a strange beast. Sightings of the Ogo Pogo date back to 1972, but indigenous legends have been telling tales of the creature for much longer. It's described as a long, slender creature with many humps and a horse head that peeks out of the lake during thunderstorms. Sound familiar? While not nearly as famous, Ogo Pogo is quite similar to Nessie when you get down to it. Both are aquatic, hard to find, and attract all sorts of cryptid hunters. All sorts of folks have claimed to see Ogo Pogo swimming around, popping its head out of the water from time to time. Photos and videos are common, but none are really verifiable or convincing. Thankfully, the creature seems to be relatively friendly. For all these sightings and rumors, there haven't been too many claims of violence or aggression from the lake-dwelling beast. In fact, it's actually quite well liked by everyone. In the 90s, the Canadian government commissioned a postage stamp in honor of Ogo Pogo. Way to go. Skeptics all have their explanations for what it might actually be, with one prevalent idea claiming that it's actually a primitive whale that only comes out during calmer seasons. Regardless of whether it's real or not, what's more fun to say in the end, Nessie or Ogo Pogo? I'll let you guys decide. Coming in at number 4, we've got the University of Toronto Phantom Worker. If a film is being shot in Toronto, you're more than likely going to catch a glimpse of U of T's campus. The school's buildings are ornate and beautiful, perfect for giving a scholarly feel to any scene. A lot of the buildings have facades that date back to the early 19th century, giving them a timeless feel. Of course, with any buildings that have been around so long, there will be ghost stories. Back in the 1920s, U of T built a Gothic memorial to honor students who had died during the First World War. During construction of this elaborate memorial, many workers were hired to help out. Legend says that one of the workers fell from the tower while polishing the bells, a true Hunchback of Notre Dame moment. Ever since that fateful incident, students and faculty alike have claimed to see the ghost of the worker wandering around campus. Some even claim that there have been ghostly apparitions falling from the tower. Folks who don't know the legend will run to see if the poor fellow is okay, but never find a body. So much for being a good Samaritan. There are many other ghost stories surrounding the university as well, but none so stomach-dropping. Stonemasons with murderous qualities, little girls lost in planetariums, and a baker who managed to trap his mistress inside a secret room. The stories are real, but are the ghosts still haunting the campus? I suppose you'll have to pay the institution a visit and find out. Just try not to get roped into paying tuition, alright? That's scarier than any ghost story.
Number 3 on this list are the Aztecs. The Aztecs were particularly fearsome warriors who did whatever they had to get the win, even if that meant sacrificing their loved ones to gain the power of the gods. Ranker says, the gods of the Aztecs never ceased to thirst, and because the gods relied on bloodletting for nourishment, the Aztecs thrived in a state of constant warfare with intent to sacrifice. Children began training as early as the age of 5 and earned warrior status upon capturing their first sacrificial victim. They then used clubs, bows, spears, and darts to disable captives, skin and dismember them before their hearts were finally gouged out. Aztec warriors were spiritually motivated, thus their discipline and ferocity are often credited as the forces that long ensured their victory. It's believed that these warriors had a strong relationship with their god, and it was this relationship and the sacrifices that they made that allowed them to conquer as much as they did. Godlike powers would flow through them and they were almost unstoppable. They were stronger, faster, and smarter than any other warrior when they were in this state, and they were almost impossible to kill. However, with this great power comes its drawbacks. They were also much crueler in that heightened state as well. A Spanish conquistador who battled the Aztecs and somehow managed to escape with his life wrote, anyone facing them for the first time can be terrified by their screams and their ferocity. In warfare, they are the most cruel people to be found, for they spare neither brothers, relatives, friends, nor women. Even if they are beautiful, they kill them all and eat them. Yeah. The Aztecs weren't above eating people either, and they would do that from time to time. Maybe this was their animalistic godlike instincts taking over, I don't really know, but it is believed to have happened. You wouldn't have wanted to face the Aztecs ever, but you especially wouldn't have wanted to face them after a sacrifice, because it would have been like facing off against a god. Number 2 on this list is the Cythians Fainting. This next entry details a very specific tactic that it's believed the Scythians used in combat. The tactic would apparently drain the opponent of sanity and may have included them becoming invisible. Ranker says the Scythians were renowned for the strength of their cavalry, but to their opponents, the Romans, Greeks, and Persians, the Scythians were also a deceitful lot. Rather than prancing straight into the fire, the Scythians found success with a tactic called Fainting. With this tactic, they would retreat from the front lines, causing their enemies to just relax enough for the Cythians to return with a surprise ambush of archers on horseback. They were regarded as invisible menaces who starved enemies by scorching their land before proceeding with attacks during mealtime and sleeping hours. Those opposing them could neither sleep, eat, nor defend themselves with clarity of mind. Rather than riches, the Scythians cherished their ability to roam and kept few belongings so that their getaways were swift and their enemies reaped no rewards. It got to the point where any shadow that flew past or any sound of any kind would set off their opponents into a frenzy, thinking that it was the Cythians. They were able to get in their head, and rumors started spreading that they could be invisible. It was also believed that anyone who fought, their mental state would deteriorate quickly afterwards. This is probably all exaggerated through word of mouth, but I can understand how this could have been believed. If you constantly had to be on guard at all times with no idea where your enemy was and how they could strike, that would cause your brain to start messing up a bit too. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Mayori warrior ancestors. These ancient warriors utilized the power of their ancestors in battle and would grow extremely strong when they did this. Worshipping these ancestors, though, was done in a bit of a strange manner. Ranker says in 1642 the Dutch East India Company anchored its ships off the shores of New Zealand with sights set on inhabiting the mysterious island. The Mayori, carved head to toe with tattoos, appeared the following day, prepared for battle. The Mayori's main strategy was to ambush the enemy during the nighttime. In victorious celebration, they dismembered and supposedly ate their enemies' body parts, theoretically as a form of revenge originating from mythology. The Mayori believed they were consuming their victims' spirits and nourishing those of their ancestors. So apparently these people believed that and eating their enemies would make them grow stronger in battle. Their ancestors would feast, and as they fed those spirits, they would grow stronger for their next fight. I highly doubt that this actually worked, but apparently they were pretty fearsome warriors, so people started to wonder if there was some truth to this tactic. I'm not really sure why their ancestors couldn't have just been happy with a really nice cooked steak, but I guess that's why I'm not a Mayori warrior. Number 5 on this list is Stull's Gateway to Hell. Anything named Stull was just doomed from the start, guys. Thrillist says the tiny town of Stull has counted very few residents since it was founded in 1856. The most famous is rumored to be Lucifer himself, who some say appears at the town cemetery on Halloween and spring equinox. They say he uses the site where a roofless church once stood as a portal to and from hell. Some say that he's drawn to the site of frequent witch hangings. Others believe one of the graves actually contained Satan's own child. Either way, new graves continue to be dug despite signs warning against trespassers, perhaps referring directly to the Prince of Darkness himself or the cults that are rumored to flock to the grounds. The first published article about the horrors are traced back to a 1974 article in the University Daily Kansan, though whispers about evil have persisted since 1900 or so. In 1998, the hanging tree was torn down to stop people from visiting. It hasn't lessened the need for a small town to bolster an annual police presence to deter visitors looking for a glimpse of the devil himself. So we have witch hangings here, we have cults that flock here, and then we also have the worst thing of all, the literal devil potentially calling this place home. How could somebody decide to name a town Stull? That is way too close to the word skull, and it's just destined for failure. People have been smart enough not to live here all that much, and as Thrillist has said, the residents are few and far between, but it doesn't change the fact that this place is deeply haunted. If the devil truly does live here, and there is a portal to hell, then there's no telling what other crazy things can happen here. Maybe there are few residents around because the devil has been taking them. I also think it's interesting that there are more police around this place. Why would there be a bunch of police around an area where there isn't that many people? Maybe the government knows something about this place that we don't. Maybe they're hiding something and don't want locals finding out. It's just a theory, but based on the rumors around this place, I could believe it. Number 4 on this list is the Devil's Chair. I am perfectly happy with my lazy boy and don't need need to be sitting on any type of devil's chair anytime soon. Insider says the legend of the devil's chair goes like this. An old farmer in Alma refused to sell his land to the city in order to build a new cemetery. Someone got a little too tired of waiting for him to sell, so he was pushed into his own well. Eventually, somebody said that there was a terrible smell coming from the well, so the city sent someone to investigate. It was ruled that the well was empty and it was boarded up. Now, if you make your way to Alma, you can actually sit on the boarded up well, but legend says that people who have sat on the well have been known to mysteriously disappear. Where the heck did my dude go? He was down there in the well and then just poof, he was gone. Like, did his body go underwater and just couldn't be seen, or was there something more paranormal afoot? Well, whatever happened to the body, I guess it doesn't matter too much now because there is certainly something paranormal happening here today. If you sit on this chair, you will literally go missing. Yeah, maybe let's stop sitting on the haunted well that people have named the Devil's Chair. Maybe, I don't know, let's put a fence around it, or better yet, let's just destroy the damn thing. Number 3 on this list is the legend of the Hatchet Man. Back in the 1800s, there was a man named Andrew Hellman who owned and operated a cemetery. One evening, Andrew was finishing up his business outside, and he was savagely attacked by an unknown assailant. The attacker had a hatchet and used it to cut Andrew's body up into little tiny pieces. This clearly wasn't enough for the killer though, who then took all of these little bits of Andrew and scattered them around the entire cemetery. Andrew was a nice man and didn't deserve this at all, and he definitely didn't deserve for his soul to get trapped in limbo like it is right now. Legend says that Andrew's spirit still wanders through this cemetery and has completely lost its mind. People have reported hearing the sound of somebody banging a hatchet on gravestones throughout the cemetery, screaming at the top of their lungs as they do it. It has also been reported that they have discovered hatchet scrapings on the tombstones in this cemetery as if somebody had slammed a hatchet on them as hard as they could. Some locals even believe that Andrew's ghost, or Hatchet Man, is so far gone that it has begun killing people. That if you are out in this cemetery late at night and alone, the Hatchet Man's spirit will appear, and if you see him, then this is the last thing that you will do, because you will be murdered by the Hatchet Man. Number 2 on this list is Crybaby Bridge. In Ohio, there are actually many bridges that people claim are the true Crybaby Bridge. However, when I was doing my research, the one that I heard the most about was a bridge located in Fremont. The urban legend of Crybaby Bridge was a sad one. As I imagine you probably guessed by now, this legend includes a baby. It's said that many years ago a mother took her newborn to this bridge. The baby that she had just given birth to was unwanted. Now it's unclear why this baby was unwanted. Was she incapable of taking care of it? Was potentially her partner involved in the decision? That part of the story, it's not known. But what is known is that she took the child and she threw it into the river to drown and die. Then, after standing there and seeing her baby drown down the river, the mother threw herself over the top and killed herself the same way. People think that she killed herself out of guilt for what she had just done to her child, and this is why I think there has to have been some external factor that we don't know about forcing her to do it in the first place. Whatever the reason though, the killing of a newborn like that, with the amount of guilt and emotion, it leaves something behind. The people of Utah believe that if you go to this bridge in Fremont late at night and wait there, you will start to hear the cries from a newborn baby coming from the waters below. It is also said by the locals that if you stand there long enough, then you may even encounter the phantom form of that mother. She won't cause you any harm, she will only be looking out over the waters, regretting what she had done to her child so many years ago. Number 1 on this list is the portal to hell. Located in Blue Ash, Ohio, the portal to hell is a very eerie looking drain tunnel that was reportedly used by Satanists to open up a gateway straight to hell. The exact story of how the portal was created, it isn't completely concrete, but for the most part, everybody agrees that a satanic group used part of the tunnel as a meeting ground. It was in this tunnel that they started performing their satanic rituals. They reportedly used this place for a lot of sacrifices and would slaughter live animals down there very frequently. This escalated until they made a full-on portal to hell that nobody is closed. People in the area regularly report hearing screaming coming from down inside the tunnel, with others saying that they've seen strange visuals and movements as well. David Scott and John Stevens, who run a show about paranormal activity, got wind of the portal to hell and had to go check it out for themselves to see if the rumors were true. From what they had heard, there was a demon called the Shadow Man that was lurking deep inside the tunnels near the altar room where the Satanists used to sacrifice the bodies. When they go down into the tunnel, for the first bit, everything is as it should be. It's still a super creepy tunnel, but nothing paranormal. Then, as they're super deep into the tunnel, they begin to hear footsteps coming from behind them in the darkness. Being paranormal professionals, they pull out this strange looking electronic device and start asking questions to it. Sure enough, a voice comes back to them. They go on to have a full conversation with this voice and learn that a man named Jake was murdered down here. The voice goes on to tell them that the tunnel is a prison and that they must worship Satan here. It also tells them that the Shadow Man is real and is currently down here with them. The conversation finishes with the voice basically claiming that it wants to leave this horrible place and that it is trapped down here. I'm not sure how real their interaction was with this voice, but with the history that this tunnel has had and the amount of people who have had reported sightings of beings and other odd, unexplained things, something is definitely not right about that tunnel, or the portal to hell in Blue Ash, Ohio.
In at number 5 we have Space Mountain. There are a surprising amount of urban legends surrounding this ride at Disney World, which is odd. It is just a ride after all, right? Nothing strange about it. According to legend, one rider was decapitated while on Space Mountain because he supposedly stood up while riding. What an idiot. Now this is only a little bit true. There was a decapitation, but it was on a test dummy, not a real person. No person has ever been killed while riding Space Mountain. However, there is another dark legend that surrounds this ride. According to legend, on Space Mountain you can find Mr. One-Way. Some accounts describe Mr. One-Way as a red-haired man with a red face, with stories stating that he hangs out in the line for Space Mountain. But this differs depending on who you ask. According to video footage, Mr. One-Way will sometimes get onto the ride with other passengers, grabbing an available seat. However, it is said that he disappears right before you reach the final tunnel at the end of the ride. On top of that, there is supposedly a second ghost called Disco Debbie, who is also said to haunt Space Mountain, and according to some riders, she glows in the dark. Very freaky indeed. Coming in at number 4 we have Magnolia Creek Lake. Magnolia was once a thriving riverport town in southern Wakulla County, Florida, which was established all the way back in the 1820s and is now classified as an extinct city by the State Library and Archives of Florida. All that remains of the city is a cemetery, with the last known burial being back in 1859. Magnolia Creek Lane is a narrow road fit for one car at a time south of Montverde on the west side of Lake Apopka. According to legend, the road and surrounding lake is haunted by around 200 passengers who were killed in a train wreck. However, many have attempted to find evidence of this, but none has ever been found, yet the legend continues. Now, while the road appears to be built on an old train track, the only documented railroad runs slightly north of the location. Now, this road is supposedly where all kinds of horrible things happened back in the 1890s, and according to some locals, at the creek that runs to Lake Apopka, you can hear the loud screams in the woods. However, when you get closer, they move farther away. The screams are said to be that of the train crew that died. However, skeptics believe this is actually sound that is being reflected from another place. According to a local, Michelle, she said, I quote, "My cousin went to Montverde Academy and heard about this road that runs off 455 that used to be a railroad bed. And they say that if you go down there at night you can hear ghostly sounds and see eerie shadows of people walking on the road. I don't know for sure about this because I never went there, so it is just what I heard."
Number 3. The Terteranova Ghosts. Back in the 19th century, everyone wanted to be that first crew to be able to get to the South Pole. The North Pole, we had that all figured out. We know all about Kris Kringle. But the South Pole was a land of opportunity and possibility. I guess we didn't know yet it was mostly just snow and ice and not much else. One Robert Falcon Scott, and wow, Falcon is a good middle name, was determined to be that first explorer to break boundaries. And in 1911, Robert Falcon Scott took a crew out on an expedition called the Terteranova Expedition. The ship would make landfall a little later that year on the Ross Dependency, a nice little chunk of the frozen wasteland south of New Zealand. He and his team set up camp on the Great Ice Barrier, and while some crew would stay behind to look after the camp, find food and shelter, unloading sled dogs, ponies, and they built a hut with quilted insulation, while everybody else would venture forward to go towards that South Pole. However, things would not go quite as they had planned. You see, a rival explorer had already got to the South Pole about a month before Scott made it. One Roald Edmondson had already planted a black flag in the ice. Scott's crew were completely defeated and crestfallen. Months and months months of freezing labor and they had absolutely nothing to show for it. History doesn't care about the second guy to get to the South Pole. A defeated Scott and the 4 men he took past the hut began a journey backwards, but it would prove treacherous. The men were already weak in spirits and started to fall to the elements. One by one, frostbite, gangrene, and starvation would take them. Scott would record one last journal entry in 1912. It's a bit harrowing, to be honest. Take a listen to this. Every day we have been ready to start for our depot 11 miles away, but outside the door of the tent it remains a scene of whirling drift. I do not think we can hope for any better things now. We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write any more. Signed, R. Scott. Last entry. And for God's sakes, look after our people. Like the rest of his crew, Scott would ultimately be taken by the Antarctic. Scott's hut still stands in the Antarctic to this day, and those who've been say they feel the unease standing there, as if there's something wrong in the air. And some have even gone so far as to say they felt like they could hear the voices, chattering teeth, and suffering of the men still freezing away from the cold all these years later. Number 2. Outpost 31. Working at a research station in Antarctica can't be easy. First of all, you gotta deal with the frozen conditions, being locked up with a bunch of other people for months at a time, isolated from the rest of the world, and being on one would be haunting enough without the threat of your coworkers going mad and attacking you. Take a listen to the story of Outpost 31, a now abandoned American research station where its entire crew went missing, presumed dead, and to date, no one really knows what happened. Outpost 31 was a research station located in, well, you guessed it, Antarctica, harboring 11 researchers, including 1 helicopter pilot, who were stationed there for the year of 1982. It was a fairly routine assignment, and all of the men involved were seasoned and no stranger to the conditions. A similar outpost maintained by a Norwegian research crew was the only sign of life nearby, which was also abandoned under similar circumstances. The only survivor seeming to be a wandering sled dog from the Norwegian station, which eventually made its way to Outpost 31 and was taken in by one Richard Clark, who was in charge of handling the sled dogs at Outpost 31. There isn't a whole lot of information available outside of a few diaries kept on computers from some of the researchers, but it was believed among the men that the dog they had brought in had been carrying some sort of foreign pathogen, some thing that had infected the men and their water and food supply, as shortly after this, there were reports of the men acting aggressive to each other, paranoid, distrusting, violent, and delusional. A log from the lead physician on the station showed that he had become so paranoid that this new novel virus they had let in would destroy the world if it breached containment, and the men had imposed themselves into a quarantine in an attempt to contain it, and eventually succumbed to madness. June 25th, 1982 was the last time anyone made any contact with Outpost 31. An SOS beacon was sent out, but when the rescue had arrived, they were shocked to discover smoldering remnants of the station. The outpost had been badly demolished, burnt, and several of the men had been found dead in brutal conditions, torn apart by wounds that didn't look like anything a human could have done. Some bodies were recovered, but concerningly, a majority of them had been completely lost with no signs whatsoever what had happened to them. But perhaps most bizarrely was the bodies found of the helicopter pilot and the chief mechanic, which were both found slumped over, frozen over, holding a bottle between them, suggesting the 2 men had accepted their fate and just waited for it to come. Number 1. The Ross Station crash. Now this might be hard to imagine since we tend to exclusively think of Antarctica as a barren wasteland inhabited exclusively by penguins, but at one point in time it was actually a fairly popular destination for tourists to check out. Tourists would buy tickets for a day trip flight from New Zealand, would get treated to a delightful view of the barren frozen wasteland inhabited exclusively by penguins. It is kind of that. It was an exciting opportunity for people to get to see something that was previously thought unreachable. However, flights over Antarctica were not easy. The weather proves challenging, and visibility is very difficult, especially if there's any inclement weather. As well, because of the landscape, it can be very difficult for pilots to navigate with landmarks. Well, one such flight would suffer from all of these problems. It was 1979, and a flight carrying 257 passengers would be flying over Antarctica on a routine trip. Now, there were some issues. The crew staff in this particular flight were very inexperienced, and none of the pilots had ever flown along this flight path before. As well, data in the flight log was wrong, suggesting that there'd be okay visibility, but the day was plagued by low visibility. This, combined with the inexperienced pilots, made for a tragic combination, as the plane would crash into the side of Mount Erebus at 300 miles per hour instantaneously ending the lives of every single person on the plane, all 257 of them. The remains of the passengers were taken to McMurdo Station, another American research station where they were cremated. Years onwards, researchers stationed at McMurdo have reported that they've heard strange things. Listen to this one report. As soon as I'd entered, I felt something was weird. I took a couple steps and the hair on top of my head stood on end. Footsteps upstairs where there shouldn't have been. Undeniably, there were footsteps above me. A slow cadence of footsteps. I froze up. Whew. Sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it? I should have been making spine chill puns this whole video. Number 5. Palibius. Our first wretched tale is that of Palibius, an arcade game that hungered for a lot more than your quarters. Close your eyes and picture it's 1981. For most of you, myself included, I'm sure that's a little bit before your time, so just picture it's the first season of Stranger Things. It's the summer of 1981. School's out, you've got not a care in the world. Your goals are to kick back, bike around town, and spend your halcyon days popping quarters at the arcade. A new game appears that no one's heard of before, called Palibius. First appearing at an arcade in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, Palibius seems deceptively simple. A game similar to Asteroids, where the player controls a little spaceship firing and geometric shapes and patterns unfurling hypnotically. It's been said that Palibius was addicting. Far more than Pac-Man or Dig Dug could ever hope to be. Lines would form around the cabinet, fights over whose turn it was. And kids would go home and complain of nightmares, night terrors, hallucinations, insomnia, and an unhealthy obsession with the game, unable to think or talk about anything else but Palibius. And every few weeks, mysterious men in black suits would visit the arcade, observe people playing Palibius for a bit, write things down in notepads and journals, and leave without speaking to anyone. Palibius was a hit with the locals, with the machine seeing constant use around the clock. As mysteriously as it appeared, a few months later, the cabinet disappeared. Attempts to uncover the truth behind Palibius bring up nothing but questions. The developers, Zinlaschen, is a broken German translation for the words for senses and to delete senses. Records of the company are impossible to find, and no trace of the original cabinet has ever come up. But there are many online who insist that they experienced it in that fateful arcade in Portland many, many years ago. Subscribe if you dare, for we've got top scary content coming to you every day this October, and every day after that too. Number 4. The hands resist him. Take a look at this painting. It's nice, isn't it? No, of course not. If you don't have to agree with me, this thing is terrifying. Even looking at it through a screen makes me feel uneasy. This painting is titled, The Hands Resist Him, but perhaps you know it by its more colloquial name, the Haunted eBay Painting. They can't all have good names. This painting earned its reputation when it was put up for sale on eBay in the early 2000s, with a small disclaimer from the listers warning that while the painting might have a certain allure to it, that you should know it was inhabited by something evil. The listing claimed that the painting would change. The characters would change poses, claiming the girl in the painting would threaten the boy. Those who've seen the painting in person report feelings of great unease, discomfort. Those who saw it when it was briefly displayed in galleries claiming they felt like there was something there with them. Some going so far as to say they felt like there was something around their throat. Take a look at it. I mean, really look at it. Okay, you should probably tab out of the video. I don't want to be responsible for something happening to you. Most concerningly, the painting's first owner and the first person to ever have seen it publicly at its first showing both died under mysterious circumstances. The artist, of course, dismisses these claims as just coincidence, but that's what someone who painted a haunted painting would want you to think. Currently, The Hands Resist Him slumbers in the gallery of Kim Smith in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Originally, Smith had wanted to hang the painting in his own home, but was begged by his family that for their sake, they keep it away. Understandable. The painting has only been made visible to the public 6 times. And each time the viewers have complained of feeling ill. Maybe we should start to move on from this topic before it's too late for us.
Coming in at number 3, we've got the Nenlook. We've talked about urban legends from the far west coast and the most populous city, so now let's take a trip out east. Known for its quaint, peaceful charm, Newfoundland is the last place you'd expect to find terrifying urban legends, right? I mean, you can get screeched in and end up with a scary hangover and only a faint memory of your previous night, but that's something else entirely. The monster seen near Newfoundland dwells in the sea, but does so unconventionally. How do you think sea monsters usually get around? By swimming, right? Well, this thing acts a little differently than most. First cited by Sir Humphrey Gilbert back in the 16th century, it was described as a lion-like creature. This fits the description of an Inuit cryptid known as the Nenlook. Legends of such a creature have been passed down through generations of people, but it was considered just a legend to outsiders until Sir Humphrey Gilbert came across it himself. The Nenlook is a gigantic beast estimated to be as tall as an iceberg. It's got white fur, huge ears, and loves to eat anything that gets close enough. Seals are the classic meal, but it won't turn down a human if they get close. Now, back to that bit about movement. The Nenlook doesn't swim, it walks along the bottom of the ocean. Yep, not the most efficient way to get around, but it gets the job done. Imagine watching a gigantic beast just walk out of the sea towards you. This is also the reason why people say that it's not really ever seen away from shore. It makes sense considering how deep the ocean is. But if you ever spot a little antenna poking out of the water, it's time to get a move on. And if you ever hear a deafening roar, it's probably too late. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Cabbage Town Tunnel Monster. We'll return to Toronto for a moment, you know, because of the urban qualities of these legends. Get it? Well, every tunnel system has its fair share of legends, and the Cabbage Town Tunnel is no exception. I'm surprised nobody's gone back and tried to get footage of this strange creature. Back in the 70s, a kitten ran away from home. While searching for his lost feline, a man came across a tunnel in Cabbage Town. Thinking that the kitten might have run in here to hide, he descended down into the abyss. Scanning the darkness for any sign of the little animal, he noticed some motion off to the side. Thinking it might be what he was looking for, the man pointed his flashlight at the movement and saw something he was definitely not expecting, neither cute nor cuddly. He claims to have seen a monkey-like creature with glowing orange eyes standing at half the height of a man covered in gray fur. If that horrible sight wasn't enough, listen to this. The man froze up and kept his light trained on the monster. The monster didn't like this much and told the man in an awful, trembling voice, "Go away. Go away." And guess what the man did next? He hightailed it out of there and didn't look back. This story made its way around for a while, but nobody ever properly looked into it. That is, until a year later. The man's friend had convinced him to share his story, so he went to the Toronto Sun with the scoop. A reporter accompanied him back to the tunnel, and they both scoured the inside. Looking around, they didn't find any evidence of a monster, but they did discover the remains of a cat. Some speculate that the tunnel leads to a point in the Toronto sewer system, and others have different ideas. Either way, nobody has seen the Cabbage Town sewer monster since. Would you go looking? Finally, at number 1, we've got the ghost ship of Northumberland Strait. Heading back east for a moment, let's consider the Northumberland Strait. This is a body of water that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. It's said that there is a ghost ship that sails upon the strait, more often than not totally engulfed in flame. The legend dates back over 200 years and always seems to play out the same way. Folks on land will look out to see a beautiful schooner with pure white sails. As they look on, these sails will catch fire and the whole ship starts burning. Often people will head out on rescue missions only to find that there was never a ship to begin with. Legend says that the ship will only appear before a northeast wind, predicting a storm. So where does this ghost ship come from, and why does it always come back? Well, some people believe that the ship was captained by a pirate who made a deal with the devil. The ship had been fired upon and was burning fast. He wanted his treasure hidden and protected, so he signed the pact and sealed his fate. Now he and his crew are doomed to sail forever on this perpetually burning ship. Yikes. Now, skeptics will tell you that the ghost ship is simply a mirage, but if that were the case, then how do they explain the flames?
Number 5 on this list is the Kamanche Speed. Apparently these warriors could move faster than anyone, and this lightning quick speed struck fear into any of those who battled them. Ranker says the Kamanche tribe dwelled throughout the American Southwest from as early as the 1500s and are believed to be the first of the Plains Indians to have horses. They learned to use them with great effect. According to Mexican General Manuel de Terteran, who faced their vicious onslaughts. Their mode of attack is generally by arranging the lances in front, the guns in the center, and bows in the rear. Their horses at full speed, accompanied with the fury and yellings of demons, they were among the bravest and most warlike of the Mexican tribes. These extremely fast attacks seemed to defy all physics and left their opponents stunned and usually too wounded to do anything but surrender. No one knows how they were so fast or if there was something supernatural about them. Most likely they were just well-trained warriors who acted swiftly, and the legend has snowballed over the years to represent these lightning-quick fighters. Whatever the case, it apparently didn't matter how fast you were or how fast your horse was. you were no match for the Kamanche. Number 4 on this list is the Berserkers. I talked about these ancient warriors in a recent video where we looked at warriors that you wouldn't want to fight. We need to bring them up again though, because there's actually a crazy urban legend surrounding them, which is part of the reason why you'd never want to fight them. Wired says the legendary Viking warriors known as Berserkers were renowned for their ferocity in battle, purportedly fighting in a trance-like state of blind rage, howling like wild animals, biting their shields, and often unable to distinguish between friend and foe in the heat of battle. But historians know very little about the Berserkers apart from scattered old Norse myths and epic sagas. Accounts of the Berserkers date back to a late 9th century poem to honor King Harald Fairhair. The 13th century Icelandic historian/poet Snorri Sturluson described Odin's Berserkers as being mad as dogs or wolves and strong as bears or wild oxen, killing people with a single blow. Specific attributes can vary widely among the accounts, often veering into magic or mysticism. There are claims that Berserkers were not affected by edged weapons or fire, but they could be killed with clubs. Other claims say they could blunt the blades of their enemies with spells or just by giving them the evil eye. Most accounts at least agree on the primary defining characteristic: a blind, ferocious rage. The legends surrounding these warriors became so well known and scattered throughout Europe that no one knew what to believe anymore. It was widely thought that these people would actually turn into wolves and beasts when they entered battle, like werewolves almost, becoming incredibly fast and strong and impossible to take down in a fight. Whether this is actually true or not is still unknown. I guess that's what makes it a good urban legend, but still, an urban legend that you probably would never want to see face to face. Number 3 on this list is Sawyer Castle. Sawyer Castle is currently haunted by the ghosts of 2 lovers who left this world far too soon. Ranker says, this haunted Kansas mansion has many gruesome tales attached to it, but certainly the most awful one involves the tragic suicides committed by a husband and wife during the Civil War. The owner of the house had gone to fight and instructed his wife to wait for the arrival of a particular ferry that he would be coming home on. When her husband did not return on that ferry, she assumed him dead and hung herself in the bell tower. However, he was in fact still alive, and upon his arriving home, he found his wife dead and killed himself out of misery. It's said that strange lights and noises emanate from the house's bell tower to this day. This story is very similar to that of a classic play, Romeo and Juliet. 2 lovers, held apart by something out of their control, take their own life in what is a clear miscommunication. Even though this was horrible, I suppose that they sort of got what they wanted. Now they're together forever, but just in ghost form. Of course, they can't just let this lie though and have to haunt this place and ruin everyone else's life who's still living here. Maybe they think that because they're still together and technically still around, that they should own the home and anyone in it that's not them is a trespasser. Whatever it is that they think, they make it very difficult for those who go around here. I'd avoid this place altogether if I was you. Number 2 on this list is Fort Levenworth. What happened here back in the day is enough to make anyone's hair raise. Ranker says Fort Leavenworth is considered to be one of the most haunted army bases in the US, and it's home to a number of helpful and malignant spirits. It has seen centuries of war and is home to a military prison called the United States Disciplinary Barracks. During World War II, there was a prisoner uprising, and as punishment for their unruliness, one prisoner was hung every hour for 14 hours. They quickly ran out of space in the gallows and also used one of the elevator shafts in the administration building to hang people. Ever since then, screams have been heard from that same elevator shaft at odd hours. Not surprisingly, nearly every building on the base has a horrifying story attached to it. I know that it was war and they were trying to have an uprising, but my gosh, hanging one person an hour? Like, that is just so brutal. No wonder this place is deeply haunted now. All of the spirits from back then are locked into this place and refuse to let go. And you better believe that they make the people who are still around pay for what happened in the past. People have reportedly been attacked by invisible spirits before. They've been clawed at and bitten, and one person even had their finger ripped right off of their body. Things are not pleasant at this army base, and I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't been razed to the ground yet. Might be the only thing left to do to quiet these spirits down. And finally, number 1 on this list is the ghost of Saline River. You already know that this is going to be a scary legend when they have a name like that. Ranker says, according to legend, a Native American ghost by the name of Takaluma is said to walk the banks of the Saline River and was first spotted by a cowboy in the winter of 1879. Takaluma's spirit was condemned to wander the river until he found the skull of his dead father, who had been murdered by white men in the 1840s. The ghost rose from his burial mound and warned that far more powerful spirits might join in the search, but the skull has still never been found. What a horrible fate. Your father gets murdered and then you have to spend the rest of your existence as a ghost wandering around this river searching for his skull. This ghost was once a calm presence, but time has made Takaluma angry. Now it's said that this ghost will drag unsuspecting victims into the river and drown them, then take their skull and see if he can convince the other spirits that it's his father's. This has never worked before, but when you have a literal eternity, I suppose you'll try anything. A beautiful river to look at from a distance, but not one that you want to get too close to. Number 5 on this list is the legend of Wall Hollow Road. Wall Hollow Road is actually quite a beautiful road in central Ohio. It is very long, starting out as a suburb street and then eventually transitioning into a very skinny one-way road in the middle of what feels like nowhere. As you may expect, our legend takes place in the skinny abandoned one-way section of this road. The story says that in the 1950s there was a couple that lived in a home along Wall Hollow Road out in the country. Now, no one is really sure what prompted the husband to do this, whether he had just gone insane or if the wife had done something that he did not approve of, but one evening he totally lost it. He grabbed the axe from the garage and brutally murdered his wife in the attic of their home. The whole story gives me some serious Jack Nicholson in The Shining type of vibes. After he had killed her, he took her body and he buried it at nighttime in the yard. Now, they weren't completely in the middle of nowhere and did have some neighbors in the area. After several weeks of not seeing the wife and strange explanations from the husband, the neighbors called the police and the truth was revealed. The man was then easily tried, convicted, and sentenced to execution. After his death, though, people started reporting seeing him around the area. When they reported this, nobody took it very seriously, considering it had been big news when he was sentenced to death and everybody had heard about it. More and more sightings came out though, and it was always the same story. They could see along the side of the road ghostly apparitions of the husband who was killing his wife. Almost as if the scene was getting played over and over and over again. The locals now swear that if you head down that road and get to the one way, then it's very possible that you will see the ghost of our murderer replaying the killing of his wife. Number 4 on this list is the Lizard Men. Now, this is certainly a strange one, but honestly it's one of the biggest urban legends that Ohio has to offer. The legend can be traced all the way back to 1955, where it was reported that a traveling salesman spotted these strange looking creatures. Now, this story sounds a little bit ridiculous to me if I'm being completely honest, but apparently 3 lizard-like creatures that are roughly 3 feet tall were standing on their hind legs having a full-on conversation. When the man pulled up to them and couldn't believe his eyes, because it's literally these 3-foot lizards talking to each other, they whipped out a magic wand and then used their magic wand to conjure some sparks, which provided them with enough cover to then run away. Now, frankly, that part of the story sounds a lot more like my traveling salesman buddy was dipping a little bit too deep into the drink, or potentially some other illegal substances. But some of the other encounters that people have reported having with these beings aren't quite as outlandish. In 1972, for instance, a police officer was driving his car by the Little Miami River and in his headlights saw a very large creature sprint across the road and leap off a bridge into the river. He was totally blown away and said that the being was nothing like he has ever seen, painting the picture of a unique lizard-like man when he described it. Throughout the years, there have been a lot more sightings of the lizard creatures by Little Miami River, similar to that of the police officer. Up to this point, there haven't been any deaths or harm that has befallen on the people that have come across this creature or creatures, so it isn't necessarily too scary, but I had to include it on this list simply due to the amount of sightings that people have had and how popular of an urban legend it is to the Ohio locals.
Coming in at number 3, I-4 Dead Zone. Interstate 4 is a highway in Florida that spans 132 miles, with it running from Tampa all the way to Daytona Beach. Now, the interstate is frequented daily by folks heading to work and those on their way to Disney World. Now, while it is a popular highway, it is also another nickname for it, the Dead Zone, an area where folks need to be particularly careful. This area of the highway has been the location of many accidents, electronic malfunctions, as well as supposed ghost sightings. So why exactly is this spot so dangerous and filled with so much paranormal activity? Well, this is because this quarter mile of highway was built over a gravesite, and as we know from movies, a disturbed gravesite means bad news bears. It means you're in for a nasty surprise. It means you're gonna die. Don't believe it? Well, oddly enough, on the very first day the new interstate was opened, a tractor trailer carrying frozen goods lost control and crashed directly above the disturbed graves of people who had died from yellow fever. It is believed that around 1,500 to 2,000 accidents have occurred on the highway since 1963, which is a lot. And worse still, many of those accidents resulted in death, and between a 24-month period, there were around 44 car accidents, resulting in approximately 65 people being injured. Some locals fear this area of the highway so much that they actually take a much longer route around it. On top of all of this, back in the 1950s, a young boy was said to have disturbed the graves, and the following night he was killed by a drunk driver, and to add insult to injury, the driver was never caught. Coming in at number 2, we have the Devil's Chair, also known as the Haunted Chair. This is an urban legend hailing from folklore that is attached to a class of funerary or memorial sculpture common throughout the United States during the 19th century. Now, these chairs were known as the mourning chairs for visitors to cemeteries to sit on when visiting loved ones. However, since then, cemeteries have provided benches for similar purposes. Once the original purpose of these chairs fell out of fashion, superstition quickly developed in association with sitting in the chair. For example, some young people dare one another to visit the site, most often after dark or at midnight, or in some cases on Halloween. Stories state that if you sit in the chair at these specific times, something awful will happen, with people fearing that they will be punished. In Florida specifically, the Devil's Chair is located in Cassadaga, Florida, and is a graveside bench in the cemetery that borders Cassadaga as well as Lake Helen. According to legend, an unopened can of beer left on the chair will be empty by morning. Now, in some stories the can has already been opened, and in others the liquid is simply gone through the unopened top. On top of that, it is said that the devil will sometimes appear to anyone bold enough to sit in the chair itself. So if you do decide to visit the chair at night and take a seat expecting to meet the devil, just be sure to have a beer in hand ready for him, because it is said that he will be expecting one. As am I, all the time. I would like a beer. Maybe that's why I'm evil. I'm the devil. And finally, coming in at number 1, Legend of the Skunk Ape. Also known as the Swamp Cabbage Man, Swamp Ape, Stink Ape, Florida Bigfoot, and Louisiana Bigfoot, this is a creature that is said to inhabit Florida and is named for its appearance and for its unpleasant odor that is said to accompany it. The ape has supposedly been a part of Florida folklore since the settler period, which is absolutely insane. One of the first reports of the skunk ape in Florida came from the year 1818, when a report spoke of a man-sized monkey or ape raiding stores and stalking fishermen. This became particularly common in the 60s and 70s, with one sighting occurring in 1974 which spoke of a large foul-smelling hairy ape-like creature which was said to run upright on 2 legs in the neighborhood of Dade County, Florida. However, some people were skeptical, including investigator Joe Nickel, who stated that these reports may represent a black bear and that other sightings may in fact be hoaxes or misidentification of wildlife. In terms of appearance, the creature is said to resemble the Sasquatch of the Pacific Northwest. However, the skunk ape is said to be shorter in comparison. It has long patches of fur on the shoulders and arm and is often described as a mottled rusty red colour as opposed to the Sasquatch's brown and black coat.